What's going on, guys? It is Filmington, and I'm back finally with another video. And this one's going to be all about Bowman Chrome autograph multipliers. So, and maybe this is something you've already seen if you follow me on Instagram, or if you're in some of the same Facebook groups as me. I have received a decent amount of praise. A lot of people have shared this on Twitter, Instagram, etc. One person's talked about it on his podcast. So I really appreciate all the people that are sharing my work because it's taken a lot of time, and I take some pride in it. Um, so what this is, it's a follow up of the work I did a couple of years ago in May 2020, and it's just specific to Bowman Chrome first autographs. It's not going to be relevant for anything outside of the three major Bowman releases. It's not. It might be helpful for the non-autograph parallels, but it's centered around the autographs and specifically first Bowman. Again, I didn't do this research for the rookie cards. I didn't do this for second or third year prospect cards. Um, I just did this for the first Bowman cards. So not the paper. We're talking Chrome. We're not talking Mega Box either. We're not talking Sapphire. We're not talking Bowman Platinum, Bowman's Best. Again, like some of this might translate well, but the data that I did and the calculation, my findings are specifically for Bowman Chrome first autographs. So why do I do this? Am I a geek? Am I some sort of math sort of data nerd? Whatever? Not really. I mean, I do this because I want myself and for others to be more informed when they're making buying and selling decisions. Specific example could be you are at a show on the dealer side, maybe across from the dealer. On the other side, maybe you're at a trade night. Maybe you're on eBay. Maybe you're doing an Instagram sort of trade thing with a friend that you know, maybe somebody that you don't know too well. And somebody pitches a card to you that's illiquid. There's been only a few sales over the last 90 days, or a few sales that you can even find at all in Card Ladder, Market Movers, your app of choice, whatever that might be, maybe just eBay. And they're trying to say that, well, it last sold for this. So it's worth, so I think it's worth this. And I want, this plus or minus 10%, whatever it sold for last. Well, what you might not know is if that last comp was real, if it was shilled, if it was just an outlier, maybe it's too high, maybe it's too low. And the idea of these multipliers is to give you more information to allow you to use a greater pool of data points to then derive your card's value off of, or the card that you're interested in's value off of. It's an orange number to 25. It hasn't sold really much at all. Maybe the seller actually waited for that 90-day window to pass after the last verified comp was readily available, and then he tries to sell it to you with the most recent data that supports his argument, right? So this would give you the ability to use base autographs, blue refractor number to 150, for instance. It's a gold, and that relationship based on the tables I'm about to show you. It's about 2.5 between blue to gold. Actually, that hasn't really changed much over the last 10 years. So that could help, and you could also derive the value off of, oh, well, there hasn't been a blue sale, but there's been a speckle or a purple number to 250. So one of the things that's nice, and one of the reasons why we're able to do this, is because there has been a strong hobby contingent. Might want to call them collectors, speculators, prospectors. I don't know. It's been a lot of people that have been interested in Bowman for a long time. And Topps has done a pretty good job with keeping the numbering schemas consistent, adding multipliers, manufactured scarcity, shimmers, waves. They add some stuff, but it actually hasn't been to the same extent as like what's been happening with basketball and football with the Select and probably Prism brands as well. So you're getting consistent numbering for the most part across the major Bowman releases. Not talking about Sapphire here. It has changed a bit. There's been some changes between like 2012 and now, but over the last 5 years, it's been pretty static. Also, the print run on the base autograph hasn't increased as much as the base print run. And it has increased, and we'll talk about that and what that's going to do for these multipliers. What types of adjustments you'll need to make, and also going forward, if in 2 years from now it'll be even feasible to run multipliers off of the base autograph. I don't know. In 2021, they started to introduce them in the retail products. So clearly, what they'll do is they'll short print some subjects, but they probably increased if there was any major difference between 1 year and the next, then it would have happened between either 2020 and 21 or 21 and 2022. Um, but we'll talk about that, right? And I spotted some of this in the data too. So we'll get into my approach for how I collected this data and how I went with my methodology for doing these calculations or the multipliers. But before we get into that, there is some summary information. So multipliers are going to be based off of thousands of data points and observed trends. And I'll talk about what I mean by trends a little bit later. The data points were collected over the last 5 months. So that's between the beginning of January 2022 and now, the end of May, early June. When you're watching this video, it might be a little bit later, but it was a 5 month period where I pulled this data. And the analysis is meant for raw and graded cards. And I guess I can get into the sourcing of the data now. So when I sourced the data, I pulled it from eBay, almost all of it from eBay, about 98%. 100% of the data came from auction sales. So you might argue, well, that's not representative of the market. You also want to look at buy it nows. The issue with that is then you introduce more noise. It's a different variable because buy it nows, in a lot of cases, are going to go for more than auctions. One would argue. Some cases it might be similar to auctions. It could be below auctions, that's for sure. But I think the average buy it now versus the average auction price over a certain time range, if factoring in enough data, will be higher for the buy it now. So, and that's the same reason why I really try to stick with eBay too. I didn't want to introduce another variable like a platform effect, right? Maybe eBay gets more visibility than My Slabs right now, or Golden or PWCC's like weekly auction. Maybe that affects the ending price. There was no reason for me to really go outside of eBay because there was a wide sample to pull from. Where the issue was in the high end or low numbered parallels, where a lot of people are starting to send those to Golden and PWCC for sale over eBay. A lot of people are seeing that some of the higher end cards are performing better on other platforms. And because of that, I missed out on some of the upper echelon players and prospects, which affected the multipliers. So what I had to do was I had to go to Golden and PWCC to pull additional information for some of the more rare parallels of, again, the top players. No shortage of the mid end to low end players and like orange and red shimmer and red, and those players selling on eBay. What grades did I use? Did I use raw cards in my analysis? I did not use raw cards. And the reason for that is because I don't believe all raw cards are created equally. You say the same thing about the graded cards too. People treat a PSA 9 like another PSA 9 though, unless the auto's smudged or maybe there's an issue with the slab, which I avoided listings where the slab was materially damaged. For the most part, people kind of trust the grade. And say if the picture isn't as nice as picture A of a PSA 9 isn't as nice as picture B of the PSA 9, it's less likely that there'll be a major discrepancy, a major difference in the price versus when you're dealing with raw cards, right? And raw cards could have a wider variance of issues to them. Sure, you could say, BGS 9.5s, they don't know what they're doing. They graded too many cards during the last couple of years, and there could be variances with that. I'll talk about how I adjusted for subgrades. But for the most part, with raw, you could be getting a card with a surface defect that could be in the pictures, that could be disclosed in the listing. It could be hidden in the listing, but exposed in the pictures. Then again, you have the picture issue too. Quality of the picture really matters. With raw, did they take it out of the top loader? Did they take it from an angle? Or is it blurry, right? So I figured there'd be more parity, right, with the graded copies. And I tended to only use BGS 9.5s at first because say what you want about Beckett, it's still a pretty popular grading company for Bowman. It's changed over the last couple of years because of availability of some of their service levels. It's changed a little bit recently, and because PSA is dominating. um, in the ultra modern space, you could argue SGC's taking a bite of that too. They have. Um, Beckett's still pretty strong with Bowman. There's a very large contingent that's very loyal to Beckett that actually still prefers Beckett in their slabs and their service subgrades and all that stuff. So I figured it would be easier to find, and also BGS 9.5s are often easier to find than PSA 10s for a lot of cards. So I started with BGS 9.5s, so that didn't give me a large enough data sample, especially for stuff that was like lower numbered than 250. So I started to then include BGS 9, PSA 9, PSA 10, and I also included a couple like SGC 10s because I'm pretty confident about how I can convert that into a BGS 9.5. So what I did was I converted everything to BGS 9.5 min gem. So I've got like my proprietary multipliers that I use to, and it's different across all sports. It's different from Bowman to Topps flagship, but I have something that I think is pretty close to accurate for at least Bowman Chrome. To get from a BGS 9 to a BGS 9.5 min gem, to get from a BGS 9.5 true gem or true gem plus, which would have its own multiplier between that and a BGS 9.5 min gem. I also didn't use any cards that had 9 autographs, and I can make a different video on that where I focus where I would talk about the. It's not even just a perceived discount that you get from a 9 autograph. It's also pretty verifiable based on market research. What cards actually sell for with 9 autographs, whether it be a PSA card or a BGS card. I didn't use any BGS 10s or BGS black labels, and there really weren't too many of those sales. Again, we're looking at auctions. In BGS 10 pristines don't tend to sell well in auctions. They don't, so that people are smart, so they don't list them in auction. So that's that. When I source the data, I also use clusters that were pretty tightly packed together. So I acknowledged and I noticed very quickly that there were events or times, dates where prices started to turn. So if you were to take a sample of information, blue refractor, BGS 9.5 min gem, after a certain event and before a certain event, same similar card, same parallel, same grade and subgrades, then what you notice that there'd be a difference in price, and it was explainable. So April 1st being the beginning of or whenever the beginning of the Major League season was, whether it was April 1st or no, it was a little bit later than that this year. You saw a downtrend of prices for players that weren't exceeding their expectations. It kind of happens every year. The anticipations died down. The season's finally there. Now it's like put up, shut up. So we saw a movement there. So I avoided taking data from around that range, unless it was like a few days after or a few days before where I saw that effect. Also, same thing with the official season being announced, which I think was like around March 10th, 12th. You couldn't take data before and after that time because it wouldn't be useful, right? You could tell that there was an increase in prices after that time. And then, especially in April, players' card values are most sensitive to performance in April. So I was very sensitive to that. I wasn't able to use any Shohei Ohtani cards in my analysis because there are too many things going on from a pitcher standpoint. I thought I had a decent sample, maybe 3 days apart with a few of his cards. And then I realized I couldn't because there was a night where he pitched and he threw really well. And that's when the sale ended. And I couldn't confirm whether, how deep he was in the outing when that sale ended. So I tried my best ideally to use, I was trying to be able to do this analysis. I needed at least two cards from each cluster. And I needed ideally one of those cards to be a base or a refractor or purple or speckle, something where it was a little more liquid. where I had more confidence around what that current normalized multiplier was. So then I could create an implied base card value from whatever that refractor or purple was. Um, so I'd have, for instance, I could have a red shimmer, I could have a refractor 499, and not a base card from that cluster, and I'd be able to calculate a implied base value because the range and dispersion for a lot of the higher numbered, more liquid stuff was smaller, was tighter. It gave me more confidence in that mean average I was using for the multiplier, which ended up evolving. So those calculations ended up changing and moving with the normalized multiplier as I did more and more analysis. So hopefully that helps. Some cases I was able to get 8 or 9 cards in one cluster within three days, in a mix. That could be a mix of BGS 9.5, PSA 9, PSA 10. In some cases it was just 2 or 3. But again, I did that for 5 months. Even if, so you might be wondering, well, what if your multipliers are wrong with how you see relative valuation of BGS 9.5 versus PSA 10? What I felt was I did this so much for the most part, just 4 different grades, um, where I felt like that would even out across all the analysis because I was doing this for so many different cards, so many different data points that would kind of wash out. Um, all right, so I can probably share my screen now. God, this is gonna be a long video, huh? It's already 16 minutes in. I haven't even shown anything. So what I ended up with was once I got through all of the data points and I had decent enough sample size for each and every multiplier that you see here, I ended up being able to calculate an average of all of those multipliers that I calculated across all the clusters to give us this calculated raw average. And this is what's actually public. This wasn't published. Column B was never published. This was published. And this is basically me kind of correcting for anomalies. IQR times 1.5 is like the typical method for people to calculate anomalies in the data. In most cases, I tried to abide by that. In some cases, I mean, this is something that, sure, if it's calculated every 2 years and it's based off of the last 5 months, like technically, a lot of people might feel comfortable using this as a forward-looking measure, meaning you're looking at multipliers of the past and applying them to your calculations of the future, right? To understand what things should be valued at. But things change, and the last 5 months are important. But what's also important are the last 10 years. So here's where I would look at stuff. And if something seemed a little lower and it didn't make sense to me, I would bump it a little bit. And if, maybe I would round it a bit. There's a certain relationship between shimmers and the true variant. So like a green shimmer versus a green, the gold shimmer versus the gold, an orange shimmer versus the orange. What we saw was an increase of some of these colors. So the gold, we saw an increase to 5.3. Also looking at the true gold, that's going to be around 10. So that's roughly 53% of the true gold. Back when I did this research before, a couple years ago, it was 38%. But when I did that same relative valuation, and you could apply the gold shimmer to true gold to the orange shimmer to true orange. They were both around, I think, 38 to 40%. And if you go back years before that, you look at Blowout, Juicer, PC Sports Car, Josh Cohen, one of the guys that did like their first multipliers. Like it was always, and people always assumed, and people always went off of like they were always kind of tight, like very closely related with regards to how much they would sell for their true equivalent. So those are the types of things that I accounted for. Also looking at like, comparing some of the contrived, more, I want to call them contrived, more recent manufactured scarcity type things that have been added, and looking at like, okay, Atomic 100, 3.1, and it sells for, it sells for more than the green shimmer, which is numbered to like basically the same. Is there a reason for that? So these are the types of things I would look at. I would do a little bit more deep digging. Um, yeah. So this part was more of an art than a science. It was more applying what I know, what I expect, what I really hold true, what I think might have been missing from the last 5 months of analysis. And if you look at here, column M, this is again missing from what I've published on Instagram and on Facebook. This shows the change since 2022. This shows the old multiplier here. And what you see here is the the biggest movers are the gold shimmer and the atomic. And it's important to understand, like, well, why would it change more for these than some of the other ones? These are two types of parallels. One, the atomic being introduced in 2019, and or maybe 2018, and you've got the gold shimmer slash wave. One's in one product, one's in the other product. That's been around for a little bit longer, but they are kind of non-original colors, and that was kind of the theme with a lot of the non-original colors. They did really well. It tells me that investors, collectors, whatever, maybe it has to do with the inflationary environment we're in. Maybe it's just the theme of, in the hobby, people just want the lowest numbered stuff, and maybe like the true blue, which has held up well relative to the gold, but it some of the other colors have sort of caught up to it or have increased relative to it, have gotten closer to it. Like the green was 2.5 a couple years ago. Now it's 3, where the blue stayed pretty close, stayed the same, went up 0.25. So you see the green closing the gap on it. You see the gold shimmer actually surpassed it. It was 3.3 before. It's where I calculated it. So it's almost like if it's numbered, something that's numbered at 150, it's great. That's an original color. It's great that it looks nice. It matches the color of the autograph. Blue is a lot of people's favorite color. It pops. It's simple. It's clean. But maybe it's just not rare enough, right? And you're not going to get a whale to often overpay for a blue, unless it's like in a BGS 10 pristine or black label slab, right? They're usually easier to find. You see them pop up on eBay and auctions. You don't have to kind of wait around for them for a while. Whereas the gold shimmer, no, number to 50, you're not going to see those as often. And a lot of people have gotten over the fact that they're shimmers and they like the look. And if you think of like what happened there was a period, was it Q2 or Q3 of 2021, where it was all about gold prism, gold everything, gold, 5th-year insert. Well, I guess it would be 5th year for Brady, because we're talking Panini here, but it started with Panini Prism Select Optic, the number to 10, just gold kabooms. Just everybody was all about the gold. There was like a gold craze, and it affected Topps Chrome. I think older refractors for basketball, and I think we probably saw it carry over a little bit to baseball and it affecting the gold shimmer. So I see that as one of the reasons why that's grown a little bit more than the orange shimmer has. Um, the orange shimmer right now at 6.75. So where before it was 5.5, you see the gap kind of closing on gold shimmer versus orange shimmer, which only went up 23%. So a lot of the true colors didn't really do too well. Almost everything went up though. One of the things you see here, and I want to bring people's attention to this, is orange here, 12.32. I gave this a bump. I gave this one of the biggest bumps for my normalized mean. But the issue is, and I didn't feel as comfortable with the orange when I published this as with everything else. First of all, you see here I put skewed distribution, and there's another column here which I haven't even talked about, which is the typical range. What this means is right around 85% of the data points fell within these ranges. In many cases, for almost everything, like for basically everything up through gold, there was equal data on each side of the mean. For the most part, you're not going to get that exactly. Like that's where I have slightly skewed distribution here for the speckle, slightly skewed for green. But in most cases, it was equally dispersed on each side of the median. But where you start to see the skewed, we'll call it a skewed distribution, starting with orange. In addition to that, you also see a wider distribution, right? 7.5 to 24. That's a big band. Even if we're talking about 80%, and not 100% of the sales, that's still a pretty wide band. if you go a little bit further, like I noticed, right? I did the research and I noticed on, I think, Golden or PWCC, Tatis and Soto, they've had orange cards that have sold for like 32 to 36x the base card at the time, but because it didn't fall inside that, that 80%, I felt that was a little bit of an outlier, even though Rafael Devers did something similar recently. I didn't really account for it here in the range. And, I had to make sure that I collected a representative sample for the normalized mean, right? Because it's the upper echelon only represents a small portion. Devers, you could argue he's part of, like, the mid-range guys, but the Tatis, that's the Soto tier, the Wander tier, that's really above and maybe that's not representative of the entire population. So when I sourced oranges, I ended up using maybe a sample that had some of the more average guys. And I think I have to go back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make an amendment to this. The first thing that stands out to me is orange, and with orange being possibly too low. Why I think that is because it's really tight with gold. Historically, orange would always be about 1.5 gold. For high end, it's 2.5, or sorry, it's about 2x, and in some cases 2.5x, or even more than that. Where I sort of fell down is the relationship between that and orange shimmer, and I should never have used orange shimmer as an anchor point. But I'm like, well, if shimmers have done so well across the board, then 50%, the equivalent shimmer to the true, maybe I don't want to break that relationship, right? But I mean, the more I've looked at this, the more and more I see these examples of 20x multiples. So what I might need to do is actually expand the typical range from 7.5 to, I probably won't bring it above 30, maybe to 28. And I might make this normalized mean something closer to 15, 16. I won't make it 20. I've had some people asking me and telling me I should make it 20. I'd say more than half of the data you'll pull is under this 13.5 number. And maybe it's even 70%, under the 13.5 number, at least what I've seen, again, using eBay and using other data as well. So I'm open to making the change. I'll make an amendment. The issue with this is now you got version control issues. So I'll link the most recent version when it's ready. It'll be like an Instagram link probably in the description of this video, where you'll see the new orange. But I probably won't make any other changes. That would create more of like a version control issue. Then people are like, wait, which one do you have bookmarked? There's a lot of people, they took screenshots of these things and they're not sharing links. They're just sharing the image itself, which I love it. I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but I've tried to put clues, on Facebook, on my Instagram page, like, listen, like, I think I'm a little bit low on orange. I think I missed this. Let me go back and do this. It's going to take a few days to do the right due diligence, but I'll get there, right? So starting with the top, we got the refractor number to 499, 1.7. We've got the speckle 299. That's at 1.8. That actually jumped the refractor 499 over the last couple of years. We've got the purple to 250. That's again slightly above the refractor 499 at 1.85. Blue wave number to 150, 1.9. Green shimmer, 2.2. Not a whole lot of movement with those two, although they might have switched places. Green number to 99 is 3. In the past, a lot of people probably didn't like the fact that for a regular Bowman, it was a retail exclusive, stayed away from it. It's not an original color. It's more manly than purple, but it's not an original color. But again, people are starting to appreciate, like, just true scarcity. So, and that's been the theme over the last couple of years, right? That part's not the last 5 months, for sure. If you look at, and one of the reasons why I like doing this when the market's sort of flat relatively towards some of the, it's flat compared to the last 2 years, right? Where we were either like this or like this or like that. I think we're more like this, where I can get a better sense of, stability in the data. Sometimes, like personally, when I started to see kind of COVID hit and all the kind of multipliers get broken right away. 6 months after I created this, I chalked it up to, well, it's just new people joining the hobby that don't really know, the difference between gold and gold shimmer. They're just making mistakes. because that's where I thought I had seen it in the past when there were kind of like spikes, 2019 little spike, and there's a lot of high shimmer sales, and people are like, oh, they're selling for 70%, the worst 70% of the true, and then I see it kind of come down. But in this case, it stayed up, and it stayed up for a longer period of time, and now we've reached some market stability. Atomic number to 100, so I didn't get to that, but that was the second biggest mover, and the reason why I think it's because it's a nice looking card. You've also seen increases with the Bowman's Best Atomic. People like that. People like Sapphire. The Sapphire look with 2019 Topps Chrome and Draft Sapphire, the silvery looking card versus the blue that you see with some of the other Sapphire sets. It's just a clean, nice looking card, and it's done really well. It's really close to the number to 71, which is a bit more rare at 3.2. Yellow number to 75. Now this kind of confused me a bit. I figured because it's even newer that it wouldn't sell for much more than the green. And this is the first time that I've actually brought this into the fold. It was introduced in May 2020, but I didn't have enough data points yet to really do much with it. And I was guessing that it would be close to black actually, which has also increased, but was also not too far away from green. But I think maybe some people are picking it up because it looks like gold. I don't know, but the standard deviation, the dispersion of the data shows that people do like the yellow. It's not just a few people making a mistake that's jacking up that average. And you see the range here, 2.5 to 4.5. It's not too wide, where about 80 to 85% of the sales have fallen in that range. Blue number to 150, talked about that. Maintains that strong relationship to 2.4 or 2.5x to the gold, the true gold here. So does this mean you stay away from golds or blues? Does this mean that true blues are overvalued because they haven't done as well as the others in time? I don't know. The more and more other lavas weren't included, if you're wondering. So I've got a note here. I didn't include the lava refractors because I don't believe that those have stabilized. There's not going to be enough data points also, especially if you're just looking at the graded population of lava refractors. But what happens when there's another type of refractor within the next couple of years, and they continue to expand lava? Will that cannibalize all of the refractors, or is it just going to cannibalize the shimmers and waves, or do that more so at a higher pace, higher rate than the original colors? Black 75. It's a basic color. It's not original, but people seem to like it. Like it as much as the blue. That kind of gives you a good indication of the strength of original versus the strength of scarcity, right? In how these end up being the same, and they get to it from different ways. The Gold Shimmer and Gold Wave 5.3. I recently picked up a card, actually. I don't know the last time I picked up a Gold Shimmer autograph, but that was basically the result of this analysis. I'm like, oh, geez, this whole time I've been valuing it closer to the low end of the range that we have here, 3.3. But it's done well. Whether it stays there, I have no clue. Could change tomorrow. Orange Shimmer Wave, we have that at 6.75. So somebody approached me and they said, Orange Shimmer should sell for more than true golds. Well, if you look at the range here, there's overlap. The low end of gold is 7. The high end of Orange Shimmer or Orange Wave is 8.75. So in some cases, yeah, you will see the Orange Shimmer selling for more. In most cases, no, that's not the case, which you can kind of discern by the large differences of the mean. Right here, 6.75 to 10. Orange was interesting because there were a lot of sales around the 7.5 to 9 range to under 13, 11 to 13 seemed to be or 10 to 13, even 9 to 13 was the sweet spot, which really dragged down that average. But there were a few. I mentioned the couple that I saw that were actually above 30 for some of the upper echelon players. That's one that I'll need to fix, as I talked about. Orange 25 is too low. It needs to be at least 1.5 gold. On high-end upper echelon players, it's going to be more than 1.5 gold. I don't know if that's true for Trout, but that's true for Tatis and some of the more ultra-modern type players. Well, modern because we're talking about 2016 with Tatis and Soto and their prospect year. Red Shimmer Wave, this one was tough. I thought about omitting the even for the orange, because the ranges are so wide, like how useful is this? How useful is this mean number? Um, Anything after gold, it's almost like precision is the enemy of accuracy, right? So by me trying to be precise with a normalized mean, it doesn't give people the information that they need. Um, and I guess I can cover it now. So for 90% of oranges, you don't really want to be going above 13x, and you want to probably be staying closer to 11 to 13 if you're buying or even selling. You can't realistically expect more than 13. Maybe you can. Maybe if you don't show people this chart or they don't know about it, then you can. Um, but on the higher end stuff, and it's hard, like define higher end because you've got a lot of prospects like Volpe. He's top 10. He's struggling right now, hitting 200. Is he a high end guy? Um, like a Tatis or the way Devers was treated for his recent orange sale. It might have been an alt. Um, red, yeah, red shimmer wave was tough. It fluctuated. Yeah, it was tough. And red number to 5, even tougher. Really tough to find much on eBay at all for these in graded form. Personally, me, like if I was to buy a red of anyone, I wouldn't buy anything more than like a PSA 9 because I think the card's so cool and rare enough. Like, what does a better grade give it? It's sort of like the argument with the superfractor. Why would you grade that other than to give it protection? It looks legitimate. It shows that it's authentic. Does it really add to the value? A PSA 9 versus a 10, BGS 9 versus BGS 9.5. For me, not much. I don't think the market agrees with me there, so I didn't actually mention that in the notes that I'll go over soon. Superfractor number to 1, 50 to 300. I'm looking at some of these superfractors. I'm looking at what Shine 150 paid for his. By the way, that card's gone down a lot. Like he might argue against that, being like, well, another superfractor hasn't sold. How's that possible? But especially if he's fallen out of like the perceived upper echelon, then he's really taken a hit. Like you would have been better off buying the base card, because what I'll get into soon, which I've already kind of alluded to, is higher end upper echelon players do kind of get a higher multiplier with some of these lower numbered cards, like especially the superfractor red in the orange and red shimmer as well. Those like bottom 4. But yeah, superfractor number to 1, like good luck. 50 to 300, maybe that'll cover even more than 80%, to be honest. Like how useful is that information? It's not. It's not at all. Some of the reasons why you can't just use this as gospel and apply this across every single player, specifically talking about that normalized mean column, the multiplier itself, is because there are some factors that will lead to higher or lower market values based on reported sales that I've looked at based on my observations. So sets from 2020 to 2022 are more likely to have higher multipliers. Why is that? Teased it a little bit earlier with the base autograph increasing in print over time. Now, not all of their subjects will be whatever it is, 3,300, 4,000. I don't know what it is at this point. It was about 2,300, for certain sets in 2016. It was closer to 1,500 maybe in 2009. Didn't really change a whole lot between 09 and 16. But since then, it's been some observations, and maybe my knowledge should be a little bit stronger here, but I've heard of like 3,300 and up with like some of the sets that came out. And you can even go to 2019 and maybe say that there was a large increase from 2018 to 2019. And it's not always the same across like Draft Chrome and Bowman Baseball. And again, like it's different for each player, it seems, based on availability of their autograph. And you also have to consider redemptions here and stuff expiring, but that also affects colors too. So, anyways, 2020 to 2022, it's just because it's perceived and because there actually are so many more base cards of base autographs. We talked about how the inclusion of base autographs in retail that started in 2021. And they can't dilute the value of the rip too bad when they're increasing print runs of the base checklist. So Yes, they've offset that by adding additional parallels like the all of the ones we've talked about really over the last 3 or 4 years. Many of those are new: speckle, sparkle, atomic, newer, yellow, and of course we've got the lava soon. But yeah. Anyways, the base autographs have probably gone up a little, but they've done a decent job, I think, minimizing that. Because of this, um, at some point in the future, whether it's 2 years from now, maybe next year, maybe 5 years from now, it'll be more valuable when you're doing these multipliers to do them off of the refractor as your starting point, the number to 499. So if you think about it, you just have to kind of use these numbers to do your own math. So yellow 3.5 divided by 1.7, right? So that's right around, that's a little bit over 2, and that's how you would understand or derive the value of yellow from having some sales data of a refractor 499. And you could do those relationships across any of these. You'd probably want to use either a purple speckle or refractor as your starting point if possible, and those are more liquid and more likely to have sales data. But those ones have like the tighter bands. But you can really use any of these other ones too. Like you could derive an orange off of gold. Um, gold's been gold's like the last one on the list that actually has like a moderate like band size, plus or minus 3 in either direction. And it doesn't vary too much from low end to high end player. I noticed with gold, good 9 to 10 is a good rubric for me to feel like I'm not overpaying. We talked about how players that are regarded as elite by the hobby, they often carry higher multipliers, especially with the rarest parallels. So we covered that. Also, there could be a possibility where the professional grade, there could be some differences there, perhaps in either direction, as well as a selling platform. Two things that could just create additional noise. The specific player and the year of the set are most important. You might also be wondering, why haven't I talked about like color matches, team color matches? And it's because it's inconsistently applied. And because when it is applied, when people do, see a 20% bump, pay a 20% bump, ask for a 20% bump, it's only 20% for baseball. You don't really see much more than that. 2025, if the card looks really good because of that match, this isn't like basketball with like a green prism Tatum rookie where it sells for, I don't know, like 3 times, 2 to 3 times what it should sell for if it wasn't a color match, right? You see the same thing with football as well. Baseball, you don't really see that as much. I don't know why. Airbrush uniforms probably don't help. You could make the argument that they change teams and it's not as useful. You need the color match, and for them to be in the majors with that team and also have been on the minors with that same team to get the full benefit. Maybe that's true. But I think you see that in other sports too, and them to still get some benefit for the color match, even if they switch teams. So whatever, I won't go there. We're in the weeds now. So another thing I said was in here. So not in all cases, but generally the rarer the parallel, the greater the deviation of sales data from the mean. And we had talked about the skew of the data. Usually what happens is the more rare you get a higher percentage of sales that are right under the mean or close to the mean. And then you get a small percentage of sales that are well above the mean. So that's usually the direction. I think what is it called? Like a positive skew in statistics. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, whatever. So yeah, and I mentioned here, like due to the wide dispersion and highly skewed distribution of sales data for the red number to 5 and superfractor 1 of 1, it was deemed useful. It was not deemed useful for a mean multiplier to be provided. That's why you don't see anything here. And again, I could have done that with red shimmer, wave, and orange. Maybe I should have. Again, precision is the enemy of accuracy. And I didn't do anything with the lavas because I feared that the multipliers haven't stabilized and the sample sizes aren't large enough. So stay away from the lavas for now. And there's so many different versions of those. That would be a pain. That'd be a pain to do. And then it would be useless data, right? Some other cards that I didn't consider were black and white diamond from the light boxes. Again, mega box autos weren't included. Chrome sapphire autos weren't included. That's not here, but Sapphire wasn't looked at. Same thing with like short prints, image variation. Image variation autographs, um, and which those might not be firsts anyways, right? So this is all for firsts. And also like other one of ones. I think there's now like a black wave in addition to a black mojo. So that is it. Hopefully, for those of you guys that stayed to the end, thank you so much. For those of you that have shared this work to others and plan to use it for your own purposes, thank you so much. This has taken me a lot of time, and I take some pride in it. Hopefully, it's helpful. It's a useful tool. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I made a video, guys. Hope everybody's happy. I am. Maybe this is the start of a rhythm. We'll see. Although I'm going on vacation in a few weeks. So take care, guys. Filmington out. Thank you.